Hi, my name is Daisy Reyes, and this is my presentation on suffering in or for art. So, starting off with the introduction, art is great in helping to express and convey an artist's emotions, whether it be positive emotions or negative ones. It helps reveal a lot about the artist, including the current circumstances and mental well-being. Themes of suffering and sadness have been popular throughout art for various time periods and through different cultures. On this presentation, we'll focus on emotion conveyed in art, specifically in suffering depicted in art. It'll also capture artists' impacts whether you suffer psychologically, which includes mental or emotional suffering, or physically. So starting off with impactful artists, Sappho of Lesbos was an ancient Greek lyric poet and musician. She lived in the island of Lesbos, and she was actually born there as well. And this was around the time of 615 BCE. She's one of the greatest and most influential poets. She's very famous, and she was often referred to as the poetess. And people would automatically know that they were talking about Sappho. Her poetry reflected intense emotional and romantic feelings, and it's been said that she died from suicide after going through a heartbreak. Okay, so some of the challenges that Sappho faced. In ancient Greece back then, times were different and women had very few rights in comparison to the rights of male citizens. For women, their dictated purpose was to look after children and stay indoors or home. She faced a lot of discrimination as a woman. She had restricted inheritance, social life, and marriage. And back then, marriage was considered one of the most important things as a woman. But women had no choice of who they were going to marry. It was chosen for them. Women were also unable to participate in outside events for men. And she had restricted self-expression as well. Okay, so despite the challenges and personal mental suffering put against her as a woman in her society, Sappho continued to write. Her writings depicted are very intense and emotional. And one of my favorite personal quotes from her starts, "You came in, I was longing for you. You cooled a heart that burned with desire." This depicts very intense emotional romantic feelings. I really like how she worded it so strong. The poem to the left is about Aphrodite mourning the death of Adonis, and she really puts her suffering into perspective as well. People also believe that Sappho was lesbian because she wrote about loving women, and an example includes, "Sweet mother, I cannot weave, slender effort that has overcome me with longing for a girl," when she says she's longing for a girl. And this quote also depicts intense emotions that Sappho was able to capture. So Sappho's impact today was that she was both impactful in art and literature. Her legacy continues to live on in modern day because of her poems. They were honest, emotional, and intimate. The modern-day terms lesbian and sapphic were inspired by Sappho because fragments of her poem suggested that idea that she was lesbian. For her time period specifically, because women were so limited to express themselves and limited in the place they had in society, Sappho served as a role model for women in her time period because she was both successful and famous. Sappho also invented her own poetry meter called the Sapphic meter, or Sapphic stanza. It includes 3 lines, 7 beats, and a concluding line of 5. So an artwork that I wanted to focus on that depicts suffering is this vase, which is called the Niobe crater. It falls into the category of being a calyx crater, which is for the purpose of mixing wine and water. It's by an unknown artist called the Niobe painter. The technique used for this vase is red figure painting, which is styled by a black background, and figures drawings, which are in red. Okay, so a closer look into this vase and how it depicts suffering. And is that in this vase, the descriptive horrible scene is captured. It was inspired by the myth of a mortal woman named Niobe, who had 7 daughters and 7 sons. Niobe boasted and bragged about her sons and her daughters, claiming that they were more beautiful than the children of the goddess of Leto. Coincidentally, Apollo and Artemis were the children of the goddess Leto, and her actions brought consequences. So after boasting and bragging about them, Apollo and Artemis seeked out revenge for their mother. In this vase, the scene of Apollo and Artemis taking out their bow and arrows, they actually killed all her children, and it captures the scenes of formal physical suffering and death. As you can see, the bodies are scattered on the ground and arrows are poking through them. I feel that the story behind this vase is very interesting and tragic for Niobe, and the pottery did well in capturing that story. Okay, so another artwork that I wanted to talk about that depicts suffering is the Baix Tapestry. It's an embroidered wool thread on linen cloth, and it tells a story that begins back into the 11th century, unraveling events that led to the conquest of England by the Duke of Normandy. It captures scenes of everyday life and of important battles as well. It's 12 inches high and around 230 feet long, and it's a product of Romanesque art. Okay, so this particular scene in the Baix Tapestry reveals the death of King Harold. It shows suffering for him because he is being seen, wounded in the face by an arrow. And it also depicts suffering around him. As you can see, soldiers are falling back, soldiers are on the ground, their swords are dropped, and their heads are leaning forward. And it is also one of the most famous scenes in the tapestry. Okay, so this particular scene in the Baix Tapestry I feel is also very interesting and depicts suffering. It's the Battle of the Hastings, that where the Normans are disputing a war with Harold's soldiers. All around you can see both sides of suffering and severe losses. Human bodies underground, and even animals are pictured to be suffering as well. So the artists were a group of women, and I also really like the fact that they position them horizontally and give them like a lifeless look. And even the horse to the left, it looks like it's taking a flip, and it looks like it has just been attacked. Okay, some impacts of the Bayeux Tapestry is that it's used for historical understanding about the occurring events in that period in time. It gives insight on the culture and warfare at the time as well. It is also used as an education tool today. It helps to engage students in learning about the conquest with the visuals it provides. Okay, so an important artist was Christine de Pizan. She was a female poet and author born in Venice, Italy in 1364. She's considered to be a pioneering feminist writer in medieval times. She was famous for her poetry, which reflected her grief over her husband's death. And in modern times, she's famous for her revolutionary works on women, which she critiqued their depiction and explored their status in the society that she was living in. Okay, so some challenges that Pizan faced was that around her time in medieval ages, women were considered to be second-class citizens, and men degraded their value as well. They were seen as the weaker sex, and these teachings were reinforced by the medieval church. Because of what was happening during her period, it helped influence Pizan's art and writings. She writes about her psychological or emotional mental suffering that she was feeling due to how women were depicted. A verse in this, one of her works, is a great happiness and sadness welled up in my heart, for I detested myself and the entire feminine sex, as we were monstrosities in nature. So occupied with these painful thoughts, my head bowed in shame, my eyes filled with tears. She writes about how she felt during that time, and I really like the way that she depicted her own psychological suffering in writing, and it really puts it into perspective. So Pizan's impacts include that she challenged teachings and common misconceptions of women through her writings and shared her own emotional experiences, which were relatable to others. She also showed women at her time how they were not inferior to men and listed that they were equally as capable, helping open viewpoints. And she began the movement of gender equality, and her writings continued to be discussed in academic settings, showing how influential she was. Okay, so my 5 questions are: what are the different forms of art in which suffering can be depicted? Was suffering common despite differences in cultures? Who was Sappho of Lesbos? What story does the Niobe creator tell? And what story does the Bayeux Tapestry tell? Okay, and the answers to these questions are: suffering can be depicted in many forms, not limited to just one form. Examples include paintings, sculptures, music, pottery, poems, writings, photography, etc. Number 2, yes, suffering was common despite differences. Number 3, she was an ancient Greek poet and musician. Number 4, it told the story of Niobe. And number 5, it told the story about the conquest of England by the Duke of Normandy. Okay, and these are my works cited. And thank you for listening.